and welcome to the virtual edition of University. I'm Lisa Fager Bediako, and I've been involved with the conference since its inception. I'm Lisa Fager. Do it this year, but look what we did. I'm Lisa Fager. And have added some new things. We hope you enjoyed Monday's self-care day. We've gotten amazing feedback. So I recommend if you didn't recommend a day, self-care them later. After later, recommend if you did evaluation form, please complete this form because we use this for recommend if you did online already. It's online. It's a win-win. It's easy. Because I'm sure you're viewing this online. The conference I'm sure you're via the conference app. If you download the HAHSTA app, in which the conference is located. Many features that this conference had. The app on your phone or on your computer, tablet, or on the HAHSTA app for the 11th annual conference. Everybody who is the app is so awesome. It really makes the conference experience up to date. You can go onto the community board. We keep postings there of different things that are happening during the day. The virtual makes the conference really make posters, all the things you would see in person and more. You can also connect with your fellow attendees. You can enter contests and raffles. Many of our exhibitors and vendors have their own HAHSTA. The app also keeps track of people's with your track time. We are giving away 3 awesome international conference on time. Any participation or activities you do at the conference. For those that attend our conference in person, you know how we would love to give away gift cards and all kinds of gifts. That has no time. So this now includes everybody, not just the in-person people. Everybody can win. So stay tuned. And lastly, they want me to make on the HAHSTA on 1, if you are looking for continuing education units or credits for social workers, you can on the HAHSTA on util.org. It's $20 for 1 day and $40 for 3 days. So please check that out. You still have time. Back. Who can you say? We're encouraging people to participate in our Friday town hall. And in order to do that, you need to go to the app and go to the community board and thread and look for the HAHSTA. We are going to choose 10 attendees to join us and participate in that town hall. Check that out on the HAHSTA. Go to the app again and look for how to apply to participate. Sounds like fun. Participate in our Fridays. Go to the special edition of the 11th annual International Conference on Stigma at Howard University. To the who can you on go to that please and so stay tuned, everyone. Thank you again.
Hello, I'm Dr. Anthony Wutoh, and I currently serve as the Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Howard University. I want to welcome you to the 11th Annual International Conference on Stigma. And I first want to thank Dr. Soheil Rana and his colleagues and team who have assiduously assembled this conference and conducted the planning and implementation on an annual basis. This is a very significant activity, and I want to make sure that we appreciate and acknowledge their work. We're living through a global pandemic now, and I'm glad that we continue to give attention to this key issue of HIV disease and the stigma that is associated with it still. I look forward to engaging with you and to your participation in the sessions, and I look forward to making sure that we continue to highlight this until stigma is no longer an issue. Thank you.
It is my honor to bring greetings from the DC Department of Health to the International Conference on Stigma. We are pleased to be a sponsor for the 11th year of the conference. And while we can't be together and share in the excitement and commitment the conference brings, the conference continues to bring important insight and action to undo stigma and its pernicious effects. As we are now experiencing with the coronavirus pandemic, we're reminded anew how stigma remains a barrier for health and dignity. This year, DC will update its End the HIV Epidemic plan, but we all know in order to achieve that goal, we will require it to end stigma itself. So I wish to convey our congratulations to Dr. Rana, Patty, and the conference staff and sponsors, and wish you all a successful conference. Thank you.
All right, in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you all for participating in this important conference that addresses stigma that remains the most persistent and elusive problem of the HIV epidemic. Since the early days of the epidemic, the Cradle of People Living with HIV has been nothing for us without us, and meaningful engagement of people living with HIV for the creation and delivery of services and programs, and even funding decisions for HIV, all require our open and full participation. That's true today for all the jurisdictions ending the epidemic plans. And even boards of directors of HIV service organizations have written into their charters requiring our open participation. But that's not the case in every aspect of our lives. Our family's Thanksgiving table does not have a charter assuring our open and safe participation at the family's Thanksgiving dinner. And the prayers that our family might offer of thanks for our family's health and well-being might not even include an unspoken reference to us. And the safe bubble for us who work in an HIV organization is burst the very moment we tell someone outside of it who we are or what we do. Have you ever, for example, sat on a plane or a train or a bus or been in the backseat of an Uber and struck up a conversation with your seatmate or a driver, and they ask you what you do, or are you married, and you don't know what to tell them? Do I tell them that I work for or volunteer with an HIV organization? Do I really want to have that conversation right here, right now? Well, I'm not surprised when I do, and the conversation shuts down. But I'm more surprised when it does not. That happened to me on one of my last plane rides before the lockdown for coronavirus. The couple sitting next to me, who I would have guessed was likely to vote for Donald Trump, asked me what I do, and I told them. And their response? Thank you. What you do is so important. If only we could be rewarded like that for our honesty every single time that we disclose our status or our work. whether on Facebook or Grindr or Jack'd, whether in our churches or mosques, whether with our barbers or in our nail salons, with providers of any kind or with any family member, or whether we're with colleagues or workmates or roommates or friends, we pause every time because we never know if our honesty about our HIV status will be rewarded with derision and disgust, or with silence, or with kindness, with support and care. It's exhausting. And frankly, it can be re-traumatizing every single time it happens. And the truth is that the burden to end stigma is too often on us, the stigmatized. We navigate daily hurdles and decisions about who to tell or not. But this year, we are not alone. The coronavirus has ignited a whole new conversation about stigma, and the lessons from the HIV epidemic that we say time and time again should be lessons that the pandemic can learn from are not just about the importance of education and teaching people how to be safe, not just about advocacy, about getting treatment and a vaccine, and not just about awareness about the racial inequities and the lack of access to care resulting in too many deaths and too much illness. Those are all hugely important lessons for the pandemic from HIV. But there are stigma lessons for COVID-19 to be learned from the HIV epidemic as well, because the fear of a positive test result is one we know well. But the lesson isn't about the fear of taking the test. The lesson is knowing that you should take the test and being honest about the risk you may have taken or the risk you may have been exposed to that have led to a positive result. And there is no shame in acknowledging that those happened, and there is no shame in being brave enough to take and learn the test results. That's a stigma lesson from us. And the great knowledge and empowerment that come from a result, if it's negative, learning to stay so, and if it's positive, learning that the result is just the first step in your road to staying healthy and staying alive, and also learning that you don't have to transmit the virus to others. There is tremendous power and many benefits in taking control of your health, and U equals U, undetectable equals untransmittable, is teaching us just that. And it's freeing us of so much stigma about ourselves, including the stigma in our own hearts and minds. And there is power in being leaders for inspiring others to be healthy, and power in promoting that science and public health are not our enemies, but our friends. A super spreader event like on the White House lawn is nothing more than denial about science and public health strategies to stop a deadly virus. And that attitude of denial, that I'm too good for the virus because of my race or my income or my position in life or my cis hetero privilege, those are precisely the attitudes that fuel stigma and shame in those who are of a different race, a different income, or who are anything but cis or hetero or white or male. We've been exposing those sources of stigma for years, and now we can leverage that new exposure of privilege and supremacy to further our work against the stigma of HIV. So thank you. Thank you for joining together for this conference to address how stigma must end. We've been fighting stigma for nearly 40 years, but this year we have the stigma of this pandemic to bring new lessons to the fight. Lessons we've been teaching over and over again, because we know well that no one should feel less or feel shame simply because a virus came into their life. So both learn and teach at this conference. It's important as much now as ever before. And be safe and be strong, because stigma must end.
What is intersectionality? Intersectionality is a way of understanding social relations by examining intersecting forms of discrimination. This means acknowledging that like racism, sexism, and ageism might be present and active at the same time.
Sources of stigma
Tend to focus on one type of discrimination, for instance sexism, and then work to address only that specific concern. But while the career of a young, white and able-bodied woman might improve with gender equality protections, an older, black, disabled lady ableism and homophobia in the workplace. Intersectionality is about understanding and addressing all potential roadblocks to an individual or group's well-being. But it's not as simple as just adding up oppressions and addressing each one individually. Racism, sexism, and ableism exist on their own, but when combined, they compound and transform the experience of oppression. Intersectionality acknowledges that unique oppressions exist, but is also dedicated to understanding how they change in combination. The roots of intersectionality lie within the Black feminist movement, with legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw originating the term. Crenshaw felt that anti-racist and feminist movements were both overlooking the unique challenges faced by Black women. She stated that legislation about race is framed to protect Black men, and legislation about sexism is understood to protect white women. So simply combining racism and sexism together does not therefore protect Black women. Intersectional theory is now applied across a range of social divisions and also to understandings of domination, such as those associated with whiteness, masculinity, and heterosexuality. Intersectionality is not only about multiple identities, and it's not a simple answer to solving problems around equality and diversity. It is, however, an essential framework as we truly engage with issues around privilege and power and work to bring them into the open. Intersectionality means listening to others, examining our own privileges, and asking questions about who may be excluded or adversely affected by our work. As importantly, it means taking measurable action to invite, include, and centre the voices and work of marginalised individuals. Please go to the
Good morning, everybody. My name is Soheil Rana. I'm a professor at Harvard University, and I help with my team organize this program on International Conference of Stigma. We would get started. Welcome all. It's a beautiful morning here in Washington, D.C. Little brisk and cold. I know it's afternoon or evening at some of the places. I would get my slides started, and I hope you can see them. So this is the opening session of International Conference of Stigma. We had two wonderful sessions on faith and on leadership on Monday and Tuesday, and this is the main session. No, it's been 10 years for us doing this conference. My team, including Patty, St. Elmo, Lisa, and many other people at Howard and our partners in the community have been totally awesome. But biggest of all, we have to thank our Lord, Allah, or whatever we consider him to be. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise belongs to God, the Lord of universe. We truly feel blessed to make it to the 11th conference. When we were organizing the first conference 10 years ago, we had no money, we had no resources, we didn't have any speakers and no participants. And we were able to hold the first conference. And from there, it's been history. It's been a wonderful journey. And I have to thank my team, especially Patty, Cynthia, Saher, and many others. You'll see their pictures very soon, and hopefully you'll see them on screen. And Lisa, and many, many others who have made it possible. So this was our first conference. This is the poster from our first conference. It was designed by Paul Grant, and this was last year.
Go to that.
Of equality.
The artwork that had won the award for best artwork on Stigma the year before.
Go to that, please.
She's there listening. She has done most of the work along with Cynthia, Sahir, Nana, Jaden, and Zainab. They've been outstanding. Our partners in the community, totally outstanding. Vicky, who did the scientific sessions and the abstract portion, the research part. My wife, who's been a great sport, Gila, on the left side. She's been great sport financially, but also morally, as well as whenever the conferences are held, she's there in person helping us organize. And our international colleague, Linus from Cameroon, who has been helping us all along. Fortunately, we have now many more international partners. Thank you to them all. This is the team from this year. You saw Lisa. These are our wonderful.
Go to that, please.
He was at Howard. He's doing better things now. Cynthia on the left side, Nana, Jaden, Zainab, Vicky Hoverman, and you just saw Lisa. It was a lot of work over several.
Go to that. Please go to that.
And I'm very thankful to her. These are our guideposts or mentors who have guided us from the very first day when we started thinking of holding a conference. Laura Nyblade, who's a researcher, she's here and spends a lot of time in Africa doing research on stigma and helping others conduct research on stigma. And Anne Stengel, who is here in the United States. She has helped us tremendously. Almost every time we call on her, she's there to help. So my sincere thanks to both of them for doing an awesome job, not only doing research, teaching us, but also helping us find speakers whenever we have called on them. These three people, again, have been there from very early on. Miranda from George Washington University, we're so proud of her. She got her doctorate and she is a professor at George Washington University. Rebekah is at George Mason University. She teaches. and Marcia with Women's Collective, and she does hundreds of other things here locally and internationally. They've been a rock for us all along. Kafre, I hope he's on. A wonderful, wonderful friend. You know, we just love him. Uh, always, always participating, always full of ideas. Dr. Khan has helped her organize most of the conferences. Michael, not only moral support, but he also has been a source of funds, inspiration, and just a wonderful, wonderful human being. He works for DC Department of Health and heads the STD HIV branch of DC Department of Health. Cynthia, who's been working with us for almost 20 years, she has helped us organize every conference and continues to do so. He's a patient advocate at Howard University. These are the promising future group from a couple of years back. They performed at every one of our sessions, and you will see them again this year during the conference 1 or 2 times. This group was organized by Miranda, and they do an outstanding job in schools, teaching people about human rights, stigma of illnesses, and how to fight it. I would get started with a video, and I hope to be able to play it. This is Tinah, dear friend, from.
Go to that. Please go to.
Okay.
Go to that. Please go to that. Go to that. Please go.
My apologies. Give me 1 second. The slide set closed. So I have to restart it. Pardon me.
Please go to that. Go to that.
From both HIV and sickle cell disease, and she made this video, and she would like to share it with you, and I hope.
Hi, I'm Nazziwa Tinah. I have sickle cell and HIV. Stigma has really affected me personally because I reached a time where I didn't want to go for my medication in fear that what will people say if they see me picking the medicine. I also got stigma in a relationship where I feared what would a man say, having 2 chronic diseases. It's not easy. Then there is also fear, stigma in the family, which causes self-stigma. You start thinking you caused this for yourself. But I'm fighting the stigma, I'm living, and I'm happy right now. Thank you.
This is Nana. Nana helped organize this conference and the last couple of conferences as well. And Nana would like to share her story.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nana Winfield. I am a junior psychology major, maternal and child health minor at Howard University. I am a daughter, sister, friend, and so many other things. And I have epilepsy. I did not start experiencing seizures until my freshman year of college, which in most cases is rare. So although I do not know my triggers, I know my signs and symptoms, and I've learned how to manage it. People around me, however, do not understand this. Once people hear that I have epilepsy, I am treated differently. I am treated like a glass just waiting to shatter. I walk around with the anxiety, just praying a seizure doesn't happen. When I experience a seizure, I am to blame. All I hear is, why did you not take your medicine? What did you do wrong now? What did I do? What did I do? I was diagnosed. That is what I did. I am not allowed to go out for too long, and my family does not let me travel. If I travel, I cannot do so alone. I understand that they worry, but I see how people look at me when I explain to them that I have epilepsy. I see how their tone just gets a little bit lower around me. I am not sick. I am not dying. I am not to be defined by my seizures. My name is Nana. I have epilepsy. It does not have me. Thank you.
Internalized stigma for me was the greatest stigma. And how I combated that was by gaining acceptance of my status and also beginning to advocate and being open about my status. I regained my life back by being open about my status. And that way I got rid of the stigma.
So I continue to be baffled by how little people know about stigma. I have a group of physicians who I went to medical school with, and there are 80 of them. And if I talk about, oh, I work with stigma, most of them say, oh, that's nice. But if I ask them, do they know what role stigma plays in the healthcare, they are not able to answer anything. So just the very basic stigma 101. What is stigma? Stigma constitutes the attitude and behaviors of people that devalue a person because that person has an attribute, something. For example, HIV, a mental health diagnosis, epilepsy, a disability, obesity, poverty, any of those attributes, history of incarceration, being LGBT, any one of those can constitute an attribute that would invite stigma from other people. And stigma is a major barrier to access to healthcare for people to actually link up for treatment or to continue to take their treatment, to adhere to their medications and their well-being. So stigma impacts every single one of those things. So stigma for sickle cell at least is, these slides are jumping through not my fault. So a game of fear, blame, and shame. So for HIV stigma, at least, fear was a major thing. It was the same thing with leprosy and many of the other illnesses. And faith leaders and many institutions, including health professionals and public health professionals who are supposed to be teaching us, they do a very poor job and they end up starting the stigma. So fear is a major component for HIV, and it continues to be. About 30% of the people, when surveyed in US, they are still afraid to sit with somebody in a bus next to a person with HIV or eat food if the cook has HIV. Similar situations exist with other illnesses also. Many people blame those who are affected with illness for their HIV and other conditions. And many people with those attributes end up uh, internalizing stigma and being ashamed of their illness. So these are the three major drivers that actually constitute stigma. So this was our first conference I told you about, uh, and I like to always share this story of Chelsea, not her real name, and I was her doctor since she was born. She had HIV since birth, and she used to call me dad. Is a game, and she was very, very funny. She wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and around 13, 14 years of age, she was finally told that she has HIV. Once she found out, she didn't think much of it until she started telling people about her HIV. And once she told people about her HIV, she was astounded how people reacted to her because she had done nothing to deserve HIV. She had got it at birth from her mother. And things finally fell apart when her best friend and her cousin, who she could tell everything, she finally had the and she was that she had HIV, and she seemed to be sympathetic, but the minute Chelsea moved to hug her, her friend moved away. That day, Chelsea stopped taking her medication. Her own family did not treat her very well. Many of them and she was that she had and kept separate dishes. Mm. So she stopped taking her medication, and she was not that she had not because of HIV, because she could have lived normal life if she took her medication. The slide just wouldn't stay. But she died because of stigma. So she did not die of HIV, she died of stigma. Stigma really kills. Stigma continues to kill, and it stops people from disclosing their diagnosis to others, and hence it keeps getting, keeps HIV spreading throughout the world. Uh, and she was that she had and she was that she had she was and this is a story of stigma in the healthcare setting. Rebecca, she was 35. I took care of her child. One day she was in my clinic and I asked her, Rebecca, why didn't you come for last two appointments? And she broke down and she started crying. She said, I hate all doctors and hospitals. Says, I was in labor and delivery and they had done HIV tests on me and the results had not come. The night before I delivered, they had convinced me that I needed a C-section. Next morning, my results came and they told me I had HIV at about 8 o'clock. I was scheduled to go to operating room at 9 o'clock, and it was 9, and then it was 10, and it was 11, and then it was noon. And I kept asking nurses, when am I going to operating room? When am I going to operating room? And they said, oh, we are trying to find an obstetrician who would operate on somebody with HIV. And she said, now every time I come to a hospital, I get a panic attack because the obstetrician made me feel like I'm untouchable. So there are different kinds of stigma. There are stigmas enacted. You saw some examples of it. Anticipated stigma, where people who have experienced enacted stigma or heard about it, they shy away and they self stigmatize and they anticipate. So many a time either they would avoid that situation or they would be defensive. Experience we talked about, perceived, where people become overly sensitive and any little thing, they perceive it as a rejection. Fear, blame, and shame remain the biggest drivers of stigma. Talked about this. So these things are moving on their own. They have life of their own. So I have to go back. Intersectional stigma is a new term. This is ends up suffering from many stigmas, and for many people with HIV, with mental illness, with other stigmatized conditions, it is not just one stigma. It is multiple stigmas which are compounding their situation. Mental health issues, poverty, gender, gender preference, whether they are LGBT, uh, their addictions, their race, and his about this. And not burden to those who are already suffering. So these stigma comes from multiple sources. They are at interpersonal level. They are within the communities and within structures and systems at the government level, the state level, employer level, and then within the mosque, within the churches, as well as within the relationships. So they are close burden and treatment and prevention, and they are a major barrier to each one of them. But they also offer opportunities for interventions to promote resilience, empowerment, and reconstruction of people living with stigma. So I is about this. And it stays with this slide stay on the first during the first conference with HIV in Chennai. Thousands of people stay on stigma for first international conference on stigma. She said church within the state and was about to be married, and this girl knew about her HIV and she was getting her treatment. And was about to help from Dr. Solomon. Could you disclose the diagnosis to my fiance? So they sat down, and Dr. Solomon very calmly explained the treatment, and the guy just sat and he stared. And then as she ended, he ran out. He ran out of the room and went out, and the girl broke out. And Dr. Solomon said, "Oh, gee." And he was about to do it, and now he's never coming back. About 15 minutes later, this young man was back with flowers, and he said, "I want to marry her even more than before." On stigma him, and now I was about this gentleman rose above all stigma, and I wish everybody with HIV would be treated that way. Unfortunately, that's not the story, but we have to work to make it so. I move next to our award portion. These are the people who have done outstanding job being stigma warriors. They were nominated by the community and accepted by the program committee. First, Bruce Richman. Bruce is the founding executive director of Prevention Access. He launched the Undetectable Equal to Untransmittable U equal to U campaign, which has become a worldwide movement. And this movement is working very hard and has been successful in decreasing stigma of HIV. Second is Victor Queiroz. He's from El Salvador. He's a longtime defender of human rights. Victor is a community leader who works passionately to promote inclusion, and he also is a leader in U equal to U, undetectable is equal to untransmissible, and he advocates on behalf of marginalized communities. Next is Miss O'Neill. She's a medical social worker with at Task Force of Greater Cleveland and a board member of Ohio AIDS Coalition. And she's an educator and an advocate and has done an outstanding job as a member of Positive Women's Network to fight stigma of HIV. Next is Alicia Tremel, again from Positive People Network. That is a nonprofit organization providing social activities for people living with HIV to help end stigma and improve quality of life. She's worked from the ground floor to help restore voting rights to those who were incarcerated under Amendment 4 in Florida. Thank you, Alicia, for all you do. Hajra Simve, she is an HIV advocate. She is in Uganda. She's an ambassador with Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric Aid Foundation and a peer educator, a wonderful friend. And she's engaged in so many different activities to empower and reconstruct people with HIV and young girls who are at risk of HIV. She was the runner-up for Miss Young Positive in 2018. Thank you, Hajra, for all you do. Next is Sante, again, a wonderful friend from Indonesia. She has written many books. She was a reporter. She has been battling stigma for a long time. She's the author of many short stories, and she has recently published 2 books dealing with HIV stigma. And she is a strong advocate. Also, she counsels people with HIV and supports them. Dr. Morale, he's a dentist again in Indonesia. He was diagnosed with HIV and they took his right to practice away. Now he provides care to people with HIV infection. He has spoken out against stigma, done extensive advocacy work, and he is author of 1 book, Doctors Have HIV, written in Indonesian language. Thank you, Dr. Morale. Totally awesome guy, so humble, so wonderful. Dr. Soheil Rana, it's such a pleasure knowing him for all he does for people with HIV and other STDs in Nepal and in India. He has done totally awesome work there to decrease stigma and discrimination against those with HIV infection and STDs. Doreen, who helped us organize this conference, a major social influencer from Kenya. She has HIV and she does so many activities under so many different nonprofit organizations and works with UN to fight stigma of HIV. Thank you, Doreen, for all you do. And last, not the least, Sohail. Sohail is a wonderful partner with us for the last 7-8 years. She's been helping organize Stigma Conference. She works behind the scene, organizing travel, helping people get to the conference. And this year again, she's been working very hard to make this conference a success. Sohail, thank you so much. Just one organization to specially recognize. There are many people doing wonderful work, but this organization was recommended. Robertson